Okay, so this next lesson here is basically we're going to be talking about factoring. We're going to be talking about factoring certain polynomials, and we're not going to really, we're not going to really use any of the AC method or too much of anything. We're going to show you some patterns to look for, and then kind of like how we factor those when we recognize those patterns and they're happening and they have names, and we'll talk about all those. So the first things, and we call those special polynomials, and they're kinds of polynomials that all factor the same way based upon certain characteristics. All right. So we're going to talk about difference of squares and perfect square trinomials. We'll talk about the sum and difference of two cubes. And then we'll talk about taking care of the greatest common factor first, right? So let's get started, and we are going to get started with difference of two squares and perfect square trinomials, which are both, believe it or not, kind of review, right? You have seen these, you have factored these, you may have factored these and not even known you were factoring these kinds of trinomials and just quadratic equations. So let's kind of look at these, right? So we get the difference of two squares, right? And difference of two squares, the word difference when we're in math means, it's subtraction, right? That's what it means, subtraction, right? So it's when two squares are in a subtraction problem, or one is subtracting from the other, right? And so when you see that, what's nice about that is it has this nice, neat factoring thing that happens where it's like pretty much you're going to have two of these, right? One's going to be negative and one's going to be positive. And the reason this works, all right, is because let's just say we've got, like, I don't know, let's say we have x squared minus 1. That's like the most common one, right? So if we have that, right, it's according to this, right, it's if x squared minus 1, and 1 is 1 squared, right? So you could write this as x squared minus 1 squared, like that, and that's kind of what it would look like, right? And so when that's the case, it says, well, x, which is a, would go here and here, and the 1 would go here and here. Well, this really cool thing happens, right? And so if we multiply it out, right, we do this first, you get x squared, right? You do this, right? You get plus x. And then when we do the negative 1 times x, you get minus x. And then negative 1 times 1, you get negative 1. Well, look what happens right here, right? This kind of gets rid of everything, right? And you're left with x squared minus 1. And so that is a difference of two squares. That kind of shows you how it works. And basically, all you got to do is pretty much just take the square roots of this, square root of this, and put them in a plus and a minus thing, and you're good. So let's look at the couple of those that are on here like that. So this first one right here, it says factor x squared minus 100. This is a difference of two squares. All right, x squared, the square root of x squared, and you can even kind of think about this, the square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 100 is 10, okay? And so when we factor this, right, it's going to be x minus and then x plus, okay? And the reason I can use x is because it's just x squared, it doesn't have a number in front of it, all right? And then just whatever the square root of 100 is. So basically, you're taking the square root of this and you're taking the square root of that, and those are the things that you use here and there, right? And so you got 10 and 10. And then in this other one we got right here, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to have two of these, right? We're going to have a minus and a plus. Doesn't matter what order you do it in. Let's take the square root of this, right? Well, the square root of 9 is 3. And the square root of y squared is y. So we're going to have 3y for both of these, right? And hopefully you recognize that 9 is a square number. And so, all the square numbers we're looking for, guys. You got like 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, and 100, and then you can keep going on up, right? You got 121, 144. I suppose I could write it like a real person. 169, I think 196, 225, and you can keep going. Not a bad idea to learn your square numbers all the way up to 20. This is up to 15 right now, and I'm doing that pretty much from memory, so it's been very useful. All right, finishing this up, and then square root of 1 is just 1. So you just put that in, and yeah, and that's your factored form for that one, and this is your factored form for this one. So that is what difference of two squares looks like. All right, and so that's this one right up here, right? And again, difference means subtraction. You recognize it because it's a subtraction problem, and because both of the numbers being subtracted are square numbers. All right, I'm going to stop the video, and then we'll come back and we'll clean this up a little bit, and we'll talk about perfect square trinomials.